Our people have contributed 23.6 billion birr in cash.
That is really innovative, and that is why the whole society in Ethiopia owns the dam.
So we're now adding, Ethiopia is 5 gigawatts of power, which is a huge injection, and will make Ethiopia the second largest energy producer in sub-Saharan Africa.
Over 60% of our society has no connection with electricity at all.
Analyzing from a purely geopolitical, geographical, ecological, and considerations, do you say the location chosen to build the dam was the right one?
So in Egypt, the Nile is more or less a private property, not like in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, Nile is for everybody. But in Egypt, Nile is for those who own the land.
Do you think there could have been any other motive by the Westerners or Ethiopians, for that matter, for deciding the timing of the building to start 13 years ago?
The Sudanese have to, we know the pressure they have from Egypt. We understand that. But that doesn't solve their sustainable development.
This is something very positive that exists within the Ethiopian people. I believe it's part of their identity, part of which came from the significance of not being colonized and the victory on the battlefield in Adwa in 1896.
Shared in terms of economy, Ethiopia gets money and others get power, and then cooperation will be knitted together. And the whole region will be a region of cooperation and a region of, therefore, peace.
And all African nations should maybe consider emulating what Ethiopia has done, which is to build this grand, beautiful structure which benefits mankind, in particular the Ethiopians and the neighboring African nations.
If development has to come, it has to come from the people itself, like what we did in this dam.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Congratulations, sir. My name is Daniel Belaine. I am filling up for the Horn of Africa Digest program on African Renaissance Television. On the very eve of the inauguration of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, we will discuss on this program today intergenerational perceptions of the essence of the Nile from the points of view of culture, religion, politics, and nationhood. And the timing and purpose and the intention of building the dam, and viability of the geographic location of GERD in terms of security, geology, sense of belongingness, and sustainability. Realistic predictions of the way ahead, considering the formidability of Egypt as the disruptor or even potential aggressor, along with any possible role by the United States and other global powers in direct involvement, instigation, or otherwise oblivion or indifference. What more or less can Ethiopia possibly do from here on to diffuse the tension and assuredly avoid perpetual threats? I have here with me Professor Jacob Arsano, among the most, if not the most accomplished Ethiopian with knowledgeability and expertise in hydropolitics, conflict resolution, and regional integration. He has been the forefront of academic excellence in political science starting from 1980, having first been lecturer at Addis Ababa University all the way through to become a celebrated PhD. Professor Jacob is currently a member of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam negotiation team and also served as a member of the team for the Cooperative Framework Agreement, CFA, for a long period of time. He also held various positions, including committee memberships and leadership positions in colleges and departments in the university. He has a high interest in researching issues of hydro and comparative politics, as well as conflicts, publishing literally countless papers and articles on, among other things, hydropolitics, regional integration, and conflict resolution. Professor Jacob has always been a focal voice on the issue of the Nile River and the basin. He had advised several ministries, including the Ethiopian Foreign Ministry and Water and Energy. On my left is Dr. Aregawi Berhe, a lifetime warrior of social justice and national pride, author of books on Ethiopian socioeconomic struggle and political transformation, having lived in Amsterdam, The Hague. For many years, he has returned to his country to serve the nation, and currently chief of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam Public Participation Office. Mr. Lawrence Freeman is joining us from the United States, a staunch advocate of African independence and development. Mr. Freeman runs an academic platform, Freeman's Africa, in a fitting name. Through that platform and many outlets, he has been and is steadfastly defending the fairness of the Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. A devoted friend of Ethiopia, he was last year honored with the Bikila Awards from a foundation in Canada that recognizes and awards Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopia for extraordinary achievement in various fields. He joins us from the United States. Welcome. Welcome to you all. It's an honor for African Renaissance Television to have you as guests of the Horn of African Digest program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations to you all on the eve of the official inauguration of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. The jubilation can be for all Ethiopians and friends of Ethiopia, but I think that must be particularly exciting to the three of you, who the world knows are among the staunchest advocates of the project from start to finish. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations
I mean,
to
I saw
you
you
too. Yeah.
shaking hands in the morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Please again do that.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. And congratulations to
Congratulations.
every Ethiopian.
Yes.
Thank you very much. So let's go to the first question, which I lead to Professor Yacob. Analyzing from a purely geopolitical, geographical, ecological, and considerations, do you say the location chosen to build the dam was the right one?
Yeah, that's a great question. Maybe an engineer or somebody who really knows the geography with the economic and development connections can better explain this question. But from my understanding, reading, and following the story behind this dam, the original decision for this site was made way back in 1964, after the study of Abai Basin done between the U.S. Government and the Ethiopian government. I mean, this U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, properly, the department, and the Ethiopian government studied together. And then one of the dam sites identified way back at the end of the completion of that project was the border dam site, the site where now the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has been located. So the location, when they really decided there, that's not the only dam. There were other locations upwards in the course of the river, Mandaya, Mobile, and Karadobi. So these are the bigger dam locations. But there were others also, like Fincha, on a tributary, now in Olega. So I think it was upgraded, by the Ethiopian government in 2011. That's the only difference. But the location was already identified several decades before.
I understand. I mean, from a technical point of view, you are a political scientist, not necessarily an engineer. But I was hearing some people asking, could there have been a better location in terms of technicality, or forget about technicality, with proximity and security? Because the dam is only 40 kilometers from the border. I am asking you this because I wanted to refer to this book from Hidase Dam, who has, the former Ethiopian dictator has been interviewed by one amazing author. And he has written this book by interviewing Mengistu candidly, answering several questions. And he has asked him about the Nile or Abai. So let me quote that because it will relate to us on other questions as well, to you, Lawrence, as well. So he says, we have reviewed our waters focusing on location viability of infrastructure on each end with what type of technology and financial resource dams could be built on them. We have seen Abai from those points of view. However, it was not worthy of consideration for immediate utilization for many reasons. First, the tail of Abai, where GERD is now located, according to him, was evaluated to be inconvenient for agriculture and farming activities. Second, it's at the very edge of our border in terms of accessibility of development and administrative convenience, while there were virgin land and sleeping nearby to work on instead of going all the way there and work which should have caused so many price to be paid. Let me give Lawrence to reflect on that one if you want.
Thank you very much, sir. The report that my friend over there refers to identified, as he said, over 30 potential dam sites by the Department of Interior of the United States and 4 major sites. This, of the 4, was the most significant in terms of hydroelectric power that they found. I believe the other 3, which I think already the government is looking into, at least one of them, they were much reduced electrical power. This one is 5,150 megawatts, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. I believe the others were in the order of half of that. So yes, it's very close to the Sudanese border, but on the other hand, you're getting, I think, the maximum power that you can generate out of this dam. And to finish the story, when the survey was done in 1964, the Emperor Haile Selassie made a public call for governments around the world and financial institutions, which of course the IMF World Bank was existing at that time, to help build this dam. I think he, somewhere between 1964 and 67, no government, no financial institution of the West gave any support to this idea. And to paraphrase his quote, he said, well, our children will eventually develop this dam, even if we are not being supported today. So essentially, from the mid-60s to today, you have about 60 years has passed until this dam was finally built by the wisdom of several different Ethiopian governments. And I believe this is the most effective, and in terms of generation of electricity, than all of the dams that were surveyed by the U.S. government.
That somehow explains it from the technical point of view as well. So let's go to the timing now, if we may, for the starting of the construction 13 years ago. Was it, as some say, it was got into somehow in a haste, without a thorough analysis of the palpable threats, geopolitical implications, security, and legal ramifications? Some even go as far as claiming it was meant to set a deliberate time bomb to force Ethiopia to perpetually stand on its toes. Do you think there could have been any other motive by the Westerners or Ethiopians, for that matter, for deciding the timing of the building to start 13 years ago?
Well, considering the timing, it has been an issue for many leaders of Ethiopia. We could trace back to Zara Yaakov or Amdetien and so on. But it requires a lot of inputs to build a dam on the Nile. The Nile is the longest river in the world. And to build a dam across this river, it looks very, very, very difficult, indeed. I think that's why a dam couldn't have been built up to this time. Mm-hmm. But thanks to the EPRDF government, they initiated the building of the dam. And luckily enough, we have succeeded. Mm-hmm. Well, starting a dam is one thing. Completing a dam is another issue. Huh? But through this phase, there were a lot of stumbling blocks, mainly from foreigners who denigrated the position of Ethiopia, mainly because they want to retain their own interests. And they were discouraging us from the start. They were discouraging the Ethiopian government. If you see some of the principles of international donors, like the World Bank and so on, one of their main principles is to uplift undeveloped countries to a middle-level income countries. So it would have been the priority of these international agencies to support the initiation of this dam, but they didn't do it. They had so many feeble reasons. Why does Ethiopia need such a big dam? Can Ethiopia build it
on its own?
Yeah, and so on. These feeble reasons had perhaps the colonial mentality behind. Well, I see it from a different angle. It's a blessing in disguise that they refused to support us, because we started to mobilize our resources, our knowledge, our people, our leadership, and so on. So when we come together and mobilize our resources, Ethiopia is a rich country. It has so many resources, human and material, knowledge. The missing link was to bring all these factors, bring them collectively, organizing them and putting them into effect. That's what we did. That's what the PRDF government started, and that's what the reform government, the current government, did. So that's why I say it's a blessing in disguise.
And the timing was right, you say?
Yes.
Okay. Professor, would you want to comment on this? Because I want to, again, refer to Mengistu Haile Mariam.
Yes.
Again, because it somehow goes in a related way. He says, to do anything, we need to be sure that no threat is posed on our country's security, borders, and our independence. Our security was not in good condition to a degree that we could wholeheartedly be confident. Somalia was our main adversary, not just by creating problems on her own, but also as a gateway to our enemies. The Arabs could at any time attack us by using her, Somalia, as a launching ground. With regard to Somalia, with regard to Djibouti, with regard to Sudan, this fact has been observed repeatedly throughout history. Although unsuccessful due to their inability, the Egyptians have challenged Ethiopia in the north and in the east. Therefore, we cannot say that they will never leave us alone. At the time, there was no chance to engage these countries, let alone creating a long-term strategic alliance for development. And he argues that we probably would one day end up in going to war with Egyptians or on the Red Sea, because of the Red Sea or Abai. So he was talking about what he said was almost 40 years ago. Now, my question is, aren't these situations, for all intents and purposes, almost exactly the same now? If they have changed, what has changed? What's the situation comparing it to what it was 40 years ago?
Yeah, I think this is a very good discourse, really. President Mengistu was engaged in war all 17 years. You know, he was very much in the situation of fighting because of Somali aggression. That was a very big one, actually. And the rebels in the north, in Tigray, and also the secessionists in Eritrea, actually all more or less worked together against the Ethiopian government for their different purposes, of course. But finally, you know, what they want is to weaken the central state power and get whatever they wish to get. So he was fighting all 17 years. So he would not really be expected to risk another war resulting from, water project. And it is also fully known that Egyptian propaganda is that no drop of water can be touched in the upstream. That was a consistent propaganda up to now.
Yeah.
And it will persist. And that is why the Egyptians do not want to cooperate now, and they never wanted to cooperate. When they were negotiating, Egypt and Sudan, negotiating for the 1959 agreement, the negotiation was not a proper one, of course. There was a very big power difference. Egypt was pounding on Sudan to accept their terms, but at the same time, it was two countries. And Ethiopia was not included. Other countries were still under colonial rule. They may not be expected, to come forward to negotiate independently, but Ethiopia was there. And the Ethiopian government sent a circular letter to diplomatic community in Cairo. Now, you are doing the negotiation all along between yourselves. You did not include us. But we are very much interested to be included in this negotiation. And if we are excluded now, it's just unfortunate. God has given us the source of the water here. And we fully know that the neighboring people are our friends.
Yeah.
And we want them to benefit from this. But that requires cooperation. If you don't include us cooperate to do this, then, of course, don't blame us when we do it alone, ourselves.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
That is tomorrow,
Yeah.
So, the Egyptian side was always pushing, like Dr. Aragawi said, pushing Ethiopia out of the Nile as much as possible. So now Mengistu was very much frenzied with the war situation. I think that is understandable.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Mengistu was planning to do a lot of irrigation in the Abai Basin in cooperation with new friends from the East, with the Yugoslavs, with the Czechoslavs.
Oh.
I saw a planned report, a report on the plan to develop irrigation extensively, but because of this war, they could not proceed. He had alternative supporters from the East, which were always rejected by the West, But that was, again, eaten up by the war situation. And in terms of developing the actual water in the Nile Basin, the Darg government did a few things. One is they developed the Fincha, which was planned earlier, and they started sugar, plantation there, sugar estate. That is still expanding now, That was one thing. The dam was built during Emperor Haile Selassie's time, but there the Darg took over to develop, sugar estate at Fincha. It's, I think, 8,000, 7,000 hectares of land, and with the sugar factory, still that is working, and has expanded. Yeah. And of course, because of the risk, the Darg constructed a big airport at Bahar Dar, and I think it was in 1881.
Yeah, it was.
So initially, the machinery were brought to Bahar Dar, to make development there, But because of the Egyptian pressure and because of the risk of, any possible attack, the Darg built the airport with silo underground.
Really?
As I heard, yes.
Wow.
And it was prohibited to visit for the common man,
Like you and I.
Yeah, so I think that was one of the preparations. If something is constructed in the Nile Basin, and that is very close to the Sudanese border. Sudan and Egypt went into agreement, if Sudan is attacked, Egypt would come. And there was a life agreement between them. So Darg was in the risk and very fearful of any attack that could be imaginable, but they were also preparing. At the same time, doing construction, piecemeally, And you know, Tana Palace is another famous project that Derg developed, but it did not continue because of the rebellion there. So Derg did not really fold hands, not to do anything in the Nile, but they were trying, checking, and doing whatever possible. If it is not a big mega dam like this one. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lawrence, would you want to reflect on that one?
Well,
yes, I'm sure you would. Yeah.
The argument about the timing of the GERD, especially by the Egyptian government, is actually completely fallacious. If you look at the history there's a book written by a friend of mine on the GERD, How It Happened, by Derege Tessema, and he outlines the whole history, which I'm sure your guests are familiar with. The Egyptians, with the support of the British Empire in the whole 1900s, they never wanted any development at all of Ethiopia. They viewed the Blue Nile Basin as essentially a water tank to provide water when Egyptian farmers needed extra water for irrigation. They opposed any development. In fact, there was some discussion when the Italians invaded Ethiopia that they would support the British view and block any development on the Blue Nile. So they've opposed development always, and they still do today, for political reasons. The timing has nothing to do with it. As the speakers outlined, it took a while for the appropriate circumstances to be developed. But from the standpoint of history and physical economy, the Ethiopians have to be rewarded or complimented for what they've done, because you have Lake Tana has been releasing water over the Blue Nile Falls, which I visited, for 5 million years. And doing so,
5 million years?
5 million years, they say Lake Tana's been there. And the water has just worked its way down from Ethiopia into Sudan, joining the White Nile right outside Khartoum, in the bridge between Khartoum and Omdurman, which I visited. And it's done nothing, no good work. It hasn't done anything useful. So the Ethiopians said, let's build a dam between these two mountains and make this river do some work. Let's exploit it for human development. And that's exactly what they've done by producing over 5 gigawatts of power. So this is exactly what human beings have done for the history of civilization, is through our creative powers, we intervene into the universe and we change it and we alter it and we transform it for the benefit of the development of mankind. Now, Africa is starved for electricity. It virtually has none in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a crime. So the addition of over 5 gigawatts of power is something that should be celebrated. It's not enough, but it should be celebrated because that's what Africa needs, is electricity. And the Ethiopian government has been clear that they will use it to develop the White Nile Basin as well. So there is no real good reason, except geopolitics, that Egypt is being supported on, by the way, from other Western countries, and has its own determination to stop Ethiopian development. But as one of the speakers said, by the rest of the world refusing funding of Ethiopia, it funded it itself, which is another positive example that other African countries could use in promoting their own development. So there is no good argument against the timing and the building of the GERD by any countries in the White Nile Basin.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Lawrence. That was comprehensive. So, in the interest of time, let me go to another question. I'll have a follow-up question to you on the comparative analysis that you gave regarding some projects in Africa. But before that, I would like to go to the role of the international community, positive or negative, the international actors, never mind the United States, at least the current administration, which openly but falsely claimed the U.S. funded the construction of Ethiopia's dam, or even tacitly, or shall I say blatantly, encouraged Egypt even to bomb it.
It's a very dangerous situation because Egypt is not going to be able to live that way. And they'll end up blowing up the dam. And I said it, and I say it loud and clear. They'll blow up that dam.
In that kind of situation, in such unpredictable and extremely reckless and therefore dangerous meddling by the international actors, what can powerful nations play to diffuse and or inflame the tension? That includes China and Russia. If you could give me reflections briefly on that one, I'll go to Dr. Aragawi.
Yeah, I think this dam has attracted a lot of actors, including the United States and the Western countries. Others are not excluded. China was also, in the area, but they have different decisions, to align with the construction of the dam. They have a different view. Now, on the question of, who built the dam and who financed the dam, it is quite clear. It's the Ethiopian government that planned the dam and that put a huge commitment, to finance the dam. I think chunk of the money comes from the government. And the public has been called to support. And that is actually Ethiopia's innovation, If there is no huge wealth in the hands of the Ethiopian government to do it completely by the money from the government, to go to the public and then get support from the public, that was a great thing. Now, I serve in the National Council for the Coordination of Public Support, for the last 14 years. Dr. Aragawi is the director of the office of that council. I think that council has been, a huge role, playing a huge role in terms of, expanding, requests to the public, creating a lot of mechanisms like, a rotating a trophy, so that each region, each zone, sometimes even in special waradas, they come in and take turn, and they take the trophy, and then put money. They raise money in kind and in cash, And many people, working in the offices, in private or in government, they went out to buy bonds. This is one way of support. So I think the question of who built the dam is Ethiopia did it. Who financed the dam? Ethiopian government, the Ethiopian public did it. And that is really innovative. And that is why the whole society in Ethiopia owns the dam. I think the way the dam is built, the way, the financing and all communications regarding the dam, the way negotiating the dam was made is exemplary. On the political sense, on the political side, there was a negotiating team, which is, organized from different professions in the country, but from the area of knowledge of water in different ways: law, political science, engineering, hydraulics, and water resources, even agriculture, environment. So these people, came together and, brainstormed all sorts of possibilities, to support the dam, and if possible, to put the issue of the dam into a legal basis, which should be, assumed that Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan, and all other countries have shared interest, and they must have the shared kind of legal basis. And that was the course of the negotiation. And that negotiation was very much supported by a national panel of experts. National, yes.
Okay, yeah.
And it was also checked, calibrated by international panel of experts. Wow. This is not Ethiopian, but it was internationally invited. And there are a lot of creative ways of trying to explain the Egyptians and the third parties how the dam is, built in such a way that Ethiopia is doing it fairly, Ethiopia is doing it openly, and then again, if there is anything that may be unacceptable, then that can be negotiated and corrected, improved, and that has been done here and there, in the course of the negotiation and the construction of the dam. So I think the question of building the dam is Ethiopian, and the pressure from our side, to bomb the dam, or a drop of water for a drop of blood, from the Egyptian side, and cutting support for Ethiopia, like President Trump did. I think Biden did. All those were things that stood as stumbling blocks. But nevertheless, the dam has been
built, and it's
built, and here we are. I think we have a great future, and we will have a new plane, to communicate, to negotiate, and to cooperate in the future, I think.
Yeah, we'll have a different playing ground. Yes. Well, we'll get that too. So, Dr. Aragawi, since you are the chief of the Public Participation Office, we have been leading that effort. So how do you evaluate the level of participation by the public? Because as Professor Jacob said, the government built it, but 7%, or I don't exactly know how much money the public contributed to the dam, but I know millions of people purchased bonds. How do you evaluate, briefly, the level of participation and enthusiasm by Ethiopians towards the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam?
This is a very interesting question. Interesting in many aspects. It's a breakthrough, We have been trying to develop our country through aid, through loans from outside. And there was no development as such. We have been just living in marsh. These aid and loans have not benefited Ethiopia. For that matter, all of Africa, it has not benefited. We have never to overcome all the difficulties we still have. If development has to come, it has to come from the people itself, like what we did in this dam. And one ingredient to build this dam was the feeling of the people. They have been always crying for development to arrest the Nile and put it into developmental projects. But we haven't done it. Whereas the other riparian countries have been using it wisely, so to say. For example, Sudan was trying to build so many dams across this river, and Egypt was also doing the same. And for your information, Egypt is one of the biggest orange producer and cotton producer country in Africa. If you see the statistics of their products export, they export to 17 countries in the world in tons of orange, in tons of cotton. But whereas we Ethiopians have been looking at our water, at our Abai, only putting some songs on it, nothing productive. Our people are still lacking electric power, no light. Over 60% of our society has no connection with electricity at all. This means living under backwardness indefinitely. So it is a breakthrough when we build this dam. We have broken this situation of life. Another point is the building of this dam, well, first to the contribution. Our people have contributed 23.6 billion birr in cash through bonds, through 8100, through messages, so many contributions. Not only that, They have contributed in kind also, as Professor has been indicating to us. There are contributions in kind as well. Also, the labor input into this work has been also immense. And when you calculate this labor contribution, estimated to be $86 billion per. So there were multiple of contributions from the people. Another contribution is the sense of the spirit of Adwa being repeated. People were anxious to utilize their water properly, looking into Egypt and Sudan, who are benefiting more, while Ethiopia is the source for this water. Mind you, 86% of the Nile water comes from Ethiopia, while Ethiopia was utilization of this water was zero, whereas Egypt has usually 66% and Sudan has used this water 22%. The other was evaporating. So we have made a tremendous breakthrough by arresting the Nile water. And thanks to the Ethiopian people who have fully supported in kind, in cash, and in spirit as well. So this dam is built through the spirit of the people, the labor of the people. And when I say people, every Ethiopian, be it in the armed forces, be it in the security forces, be it in the schools, be it anywhere, in the farmland or in pastoralists, all have contributed to the realization of this dam. And I hope this spirit had opened the door to development. It's a breakthrough.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's highly encouraging. Lawrence, let me get back to you on this one briefly, and then among the several articles you wrote and interviews you gave on GERD, including this one, which all, in my opinion, are always well articulated. You recently said the soon-to-be inaugurated dam can be considered as the most momentous accomplishment for Africa since the continent's liberation from colonialism. So what comparable feats did you have in mind to reach to that assertion?
Thank you. Well, if we study the history of African nations, which is obviously a very long history, but if we move up to the 1960s, when I guess about 30 or so nations in Africa became independent, this was a major change in world politics and a major change on the African continent. Unfortunately, over the last 60 years, our development has not been as robust as necessary. And Africa has a large section of the population still without electricity and and living in poverty. And the only way to change that is through economic development, as the speakers have already identified. And this hasn't happened. The only big dam that was built on the African continent that was assisted by the West was by Kwame Nkrumah and John F. Kennedy in the Volta Dam project. So over a period of 6 decades, there's been no major African initiative for development of this scale. Again, you're talking about the sub-Saharan African nations have about generating capacity of about 90,000 megawatts, which is ridiculous. It's actually criminal for 1 billion people. So we're now adding, Ethiopia is 5 gigawatts of power, which is a huge injection and will make Ethiopia the second largest energy producer in sub-Saharan Africa. There's nothing comparable to this in the last 6 decades of economic development. The comments that you mentioned by President Trump in his first administration, and then again several weeks ago in his second administration, are very unfortunate. President Trump, like President Biden, has very, very little understanding of Africa. In fact, my experience in over almost 40 years of working in Washington is the Congress, Republicans and Democrats, have almost no understanding of Africa. But more significantly, the United States and the West as a whole has lost the conception of development of the kind that was just discussed, where assisting African nations to develop themselves, not through aid, and in physical infrastructure like energy and railroads and other projects that develop the economy. The West contributes nothing to that. They've lost the meaning of the word. So what Ethiopia has done should be, on the normal, rational people in the US and the West, they would be praising this accomplishment. And not only are they not celebrating it, but there's no coverage of it in the Western press outside of what I write. No one wants to cover this.
So those people who don't seem to know a lot about Africa and its immense history, they have the power. And those people who know a lot about Africa, like you do, you don't have the power. So the influence is very visible. That's why we are doing this kind of panel discussions, so that people would know exactly how the situation started and is going. Go ahead.
And one additional comment on the last speaker to add on is I advocated a couple of years ago, but now we know the official date of the inauguration is September 9th. And in light of the fact I agree completely that the development of the GERD has the same qualifications as Adwa Day, which was March 1st, 1896, as far as identifying a national identity for the Ethiopian people. So my proposal to the government is September 9th become GERD Day because of its similarity to Adwa Day.
Like a public holiday, you mean?
Yes, a celebration. A celebration of creativity and determination by the Ethiopian people.
National pride, yeah. That sounds to be a very interesting idea. So let me go to you, Professor Jacob. The world is evidently moving towards renewable energy. This is a question that came from one of our readers, one of our viewers. The world is evidently moving towards renewable energy options quickly, and these options will most likely decide the winners and losers of development and geopolitics. GERD has also solidified Ethiopia's position as a regional anchor. So how can Ethiopia navigate between sustainable green development and geo and hydro politics?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think renewable energy is, the language of our era. That's very important. Everybody is talking about it. And the climate change politics, the climate change discourse is also, around this green energy, replacing, fossil energy or even nuclear energy in terms of, in terms of cleanliness, you see. So I think Ethiopia has the best opportunity and a very reasonable practice, which can be replicated, first for Ethiopia and for the region. Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of Ethiopia, more than 90% of the energy comes from hydro, mm-hmm. And other sources are yet to develop, including the solar energy, including, the geothermal energy and other forms of energy. Now, the energy Ethiopia has been producing, it's not yet covering all Ethiopia, but while Ethiopia develops her economy, while the energy supporting that development, Ethiopia has the opportunity to sell the extra energy that is not being applied within Ethiopia to the neighboring countries. That is why I think that was mentioned by Lawrence earlier on. Sudan is, purchasing energy from Ethiopia. That is clean energy. Djibouti is doing the same thing. Kenya is buying in a substantive amount. And now there is, new project that connects Ethiopian hydropower to Tanzania. Yeah. Now it's actually underway. Mm-hmm. And other countries have put their requests, including South Sudan. Hopefully, the energy coming out of Ethiopia, the estimate is 45,000 megawatts. That's a big one, from water, If that is harnessed, now Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is going to produce in the order of 5,150 megawatts, the latest, figure. And then there will be other dams in Ethiopia. In the upstream Abai, on Takaze, there's already one, and others can come up. On branches of Abai, like Fincha, like Dabus, like Gudar, all this will come. And in other basins also, like Omo Gibe, we have now the cascade dams, Gibe 1, Gibe 2, Gibe 3, and now Gibe 4 is one of the biggest, is coming very soon. I think they are almost more than 50% accomplished, maybe 70%. So if you add all this into the potential of the hydropower capacity in Ethiopia, and that will not be consumed all in Ethiopia, so that can be, gridded up into Somalia, into Sudan, into Egypt, and so on. Now, when Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan negotiated and came up with a declaration on principles, on DOP, Declaration of Principles, in 2015, one of the, I was part of the negotiating team.
Yeah, I know.
One of the provisions there is the priority will be given in terms of power, sharing. The priority would be given to Egypt and Sudan. Now, it is the chance of Sudan, they are using it, and it is the chance of Egypt to use it. Now, Egypt produces some 2,000 megawatts from the Nile, but the rest is from fossil, and fossil is not clean. And Egypt is a fully lit country, in terms of power, but the fossil energy is not sustainable for Egypt. It's not for, in fact, any other country. So if Egypt makes, a decision to cooperate in this area, as well as in other areas, so that is a huge benefit. They can negotiate on tariff, but they can use the energy, and you cannot keep your energy just in the country. It can be gridded up. It can even cross, seas. Across the Red Sea, it can go to Arabia. And there is a scheme that indicates in the future it is a possibility that the gridding of this power will go to Jordan, even to Turkey. It can also go all the way to Northern Africa. It can cross through Gibraltar to Spain. Why not?
Yeah,
it's a possibility.
Yeah.
The question of economics is the question of option. Generating clean energy in Ethiopia is a good thing. It has started. There is a practice. There is success now. But in the future, that can be shared, shared in terms of economy. Ethiopia gets money and others get power, and then cooperation will be knitted together. And the whole region will be a region of cooperation and a region of, therefore, peace.
Very interesting. That's very interesting. So, Professor, thank you so much. So, in the interest of time, I will ask you another question just to reflect on. In your expert analysis, goodwill and patriotism set aside, just frankly speaking, how do you expect the whole GERD and Egypt saga to culminate? What more or less can Ethiopia possibly do from here on to diffuse tension and assuredly avoid perpetual threat? Shall I start from you? Okay. What more can Ethiopia do or not do?
Well, Ethiopia's position is clear. Equitable and reasonable use of the water. What more could we say? All the negotiating teams had these directives to use the water equitably and reasonably. And that's how sustainable development can be achieved. So this is the only path to create a mutual beneficial situation using the waters. We have plenty of waters. Of course, we haven't used our waters till this time, regrettably enough. And there were so many pressures, especially pressure coming from Egypt and its allies. The Egyptians have been at war against Ethiopia since 1,400 years back, in 624. They have tried to invade Ethiopia through Adolis. The whole purpose being to control the source of the Nile. But they have failed. And they have tried again in the 80s, late 80s. They have failed. So they will fail. But they alter their strategies and try to come from within. A lot has to be done to convince the Egyptians. Incidentally, I would like to congratulate also people like Mr. Lawrence, Friends of Ethiopia, together with other Friends of Ethiopia who have been advocating for fairness, for fair share of the waters, including Professor Anna Fitzgerald from Canada, including Professor John Abing from the Netherlands, and so on. So many reasonable people who has been fighting for fair distribution of the water. So I think we have to, all these Friends of Ethiopia also have to try, along with the Ethiopians, to convince the Egyptians unfair attitude and come to their senses so that we can develop together regionally.
Thank you very much. Lawrence, do you have anything to add on this one?
Well, the Egyptians actually are not thinking clearly on this issue, because when I visited the GERD for a second time in May, they have made every effort in the design of the dam to make sure there's a steady flow of water into the White Nile. So in effect, there'll be no droughts that we've seen and I've seen in Sudan or Egypt. There'll also be no flooding. In fact, there'll be a greater force of water continuously reaching the Aswan Dam and into the Egyptian society as a result of the dam. So the dam is actually going to help Egypt and Sudan. One of the problems we have is there are indications, to me clearly, that there are people in the current presidency of Donald Trump who have a special relationship with Egypt, and therefore they're getting support from outside of the continent for some of their positions. But really, Egypt has lost this battle. This is a fait accompli, and the Ethiopians have made clear this is a dam for development. And as pointed out, actually Ethiopia is carrying out the mandate of the African Union for regional integration, because Ethiopia is already selling electricity to Kenya, Djibouti, and Sudan, is working on Tanzania and probably South Sudan. So this is regional integration coming from the Ethiopian grid of electricity for neighboring countries. And this will increase as the dam gets up to 5,000 gigawatts of power. So the Ethiopians are practicing what Africa is asked for, which is development, regional development, and raising the standard of living. This is the crucial question which the Americans in the West don't really think about. Are we raising the standard of living, the conditions of life for Ethiopians, for Africans, by this input of infrastructure coming from the dam, electricity? If we are, then we should be celebrating this development, and all African nations should maybe consider emulating what Ethiopia has done, which is to build this grand, beautiful structure which benefits mankind, in particular the Ethiopians and the neighboring African nations. And Egypt should come around and give up this geopolitical belief that they own the Nile because Queen Victoria gave it to them in 1903, and accept a new reality of water development of the Nile.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. So, as I told you, Dr. Aragawi, I would give you a chance to address the public directly. Like if I asked you, each one of you, to convey a direct message to the peoples of Ethiopia, Egypt, the Sudan, and the international community in 2 minutes. Okay, you could probably make it 3 because it's very important. Okay. So what would you say to each? Like first to Ethiopians, then to Egyptians, then to the Sudanese, and finally to the international community. I would prefer if Professor Yaqub directly talk to the Egyptian people. I start with you, and then Dr. Aragawi would talk to the public, and then Lawrence as well. So let me start with you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I think that's very fair. We have to look forward. We have a lot of life in the future. So far, we have been really in a difficult and tense situation. Now, for Ethiopians, what has been done, like we discussed, 3 of us, what has been done is a great accomplishment, and it is a good practice. And Ethiopia has to continue building dams in Ethiopia, produce energy, as well as, use the water resources for other purposes, including agriculture, in which case Ethiopia can be, relieved from the poverty situation in the future. So this should continue, and Ethiopia has good practice. For Sudan, I think the Sudanese, we have a lot of friends in Sudan, Khartoum University and other universities, and also in the negotiating platform. Sudanese are very nice people, and very intelligent people. But the problem with Sudan is how to make their case, clearly from national interest point. They have all the opportunities to align with Ethiopia, with other upstream countries, to develop their country in terms of hydropolitics or water-related politics, water-related development. So I think Sudan will determine in the future which one is the best one. We know historical pressure, we know political pressure on Sudan from Egypt, we know that. But I think Sudan has, tried to relieve herself in terms of national interest to take the best course of relations in the region. For Egypt, I think Egypt has been trying to impose the will of Egypt and the will of the Egyptian, let me say, property owners. So in Egypt, the Nile is more or less a private property, not like in Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, Nile is for everybody. But in Egypt, Nile is for those who own the land. Those who own the land are the wealthy people who inherited the entire course of the Nile in the 2 banks, So that is why, they think cooperating in the region would, take away their right from their, wealth, from their personal properties and so on. I think that's the wrong thing. We can understand that. I've been in Egypt several times. I visited the rural areas of Egypt. And because of bad management of water in Egypt, one, Egypt is losing a lot of water. And the second, Egypt is utilizing the water in environmental unhealthy manner, I don't want to go into the details, but cooperating with Egypt, with Ethiopia, Sudan, and other upstream countries, then cooperation will produce knowledge, would produce, a lot of interesting interests to align. So in that case, Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan can, fare the best. But Egypt must know that no upstream country can be ruled by the agreements Egypt made with the British. Natural and historical rights for Egypt, this is unacceptable. And Egypt and Sudan agreed to have a monopoly of the Nile, but other countries don't accept this. I think they must understand. This is a very elementary, water belongs to everybody, and all countries share it. And that means we share it in earnest, in cooperation. And then Egypt must come to the cooperative framework, like, acceding to Nile cooperative framework. And Egypt has to accept the interest of upstream countries in a sooner period than they lag their feet.
You want to say something to the international
I think the international community can play a fair role, but we are not very much enthusiastic that international community will save us.
Yeah.
But international community has to choose, peace, cooperation, and support the mechanisms of peace and cooperation, especially on the question of the Nile, rather than align with one or another. That does not help any of these countries. So international community can play a fairer role now if they did not do in the past. So I mean that is what I can say.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aragawi.
In the first place, the key to development of Ethiopia is in the hands of Ethiopians. No other country can take us out of the backwardness and the underdeveloped situation. It's we Ethiopians can only save ourselves by mobilizing our human and material resources, our knowledge, etc. So we have to focus on the potential energy we have to develop. Other international forces or actors may take a positive role, but it cannot be the defining role. The defining role totally depends on us. How? We have proved it. We have proved it in constructing the GERD, the Great Renaissance Dam, which generates 5,150 megawatt electricity. And through this generation of electricity, we can build every developmental project to the finish. All countries, if we see in the world, take European countries or Asian countries, including Korea, who were at the level we are in, now they have developed. They had developed through creating electric powers. Japan has developed through creating electric powers. Korea has developed, Vietnam is developing, China has developed by creating power. So we are blessed with rivers, with waters, where we can build not only one dam, GERD, but many dams, 10, 20, 100 of dams. And we can come out of this situation. So if we can come together, mobilize our resources, human and material, and try to define the path of development, which we have already started by building the GERD, then development is in our grip. Otherwise, nobody will care for us. Every nation, every other country cares for its own interest. So we have to care for our interests. Thanks, we have now a good example, the GERD. So through the exemplary development path of the GERD, I think we can do a lot of things, thanks to the Ethiopian people. And the Ethiopian people have proven that they can develop without foreign aid or without foreign loan, or, and etc. So we have to keep this pace to its maximum level. To the Egyptians, I think they have to come to their senses. They have to be fair. I mean, they have been using Nile ever since. They have been using it single-handedly. And they didn't want us to share our own water. This is totally unfair. So we cannot, nobody, no sensible person can continue with this unfair relationship. So they have to come to their senses. If we come together, if we have to set up a regional cooperative mechanisms, we can develop together. We cannot stop the Nile water for all practical reasons. After they hit the turbines which generate electricity, they all continue their course. So people should not, Egyptians should not dwell on weak, feeble reasons to continue with their old-fashioned agreements, 1915 or 1929. Already these old agreements are shredded into pieces through the completion of this dam. So they have to know this.
And the Sudanese?
The Sudanese have to, we know the pressure they have from Egypt. We understand that. But that doesn't solve their sustainable development. Sustainable development can be achieved through reasonable agreements with all downstream or upstream countries. So they have to come to these reasonable agreements, and we can cooperate and we can develop together, come out from all this backwardness.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aragawi. Lawrence, the four actors, Ethiopians, Egyptians, the Sudanese, and the international community.
Back in 2010, I was contracted to write a report on Ethiopia for an Asian government. And at that time, I identified the potential of Ethiopia as the water tower of Africa. I didn't know about the GERD at that point. This was 2010. And now I've seen the fruition of that, and I see the potential for a much greater conception of how to change and transform Ethiopian society and the economy of Ethiopia. Because look, right now, Ethiopia is having this huge injection of electricity. There is also a report, according to my last visit, that Ethiopia now is going to produce 30 million metric tons of wheat this year, and has been self-sufficient for wheat since 2023. There is a focus on increasing manufacturing. The increase in manufacturing, the increase in agriculture are essential for eliminating poverty and hunger. And so Ethiopians, as has been reported, has taken their own initiative on a comprehensive development program for the nation. There are all kinds of problems and internal conflicts. But this drive, this impetus, which I saw a decade ago when I visited Ethiopia first in 2014, this is something very positive that exists within the Ethiopian people. I believe it's part of their identity, part of which came from the significance of not being colonized and the victory on the battlefield in Adwa in 1896. So we're seeing the development of the potential of Ethiopia economically, which is what all African nations desperately need if we're going to improve the quality of life. The Sudanese really don't object to the dam. They're just pressured by the Egyptians. In fact, the Sudanese water minister admitted a couple of years ago, and it's been true today, that there's been no reduction in the water flow to Sudan and to Egypt during the process of filling the dam to 74 billion cubic meters of water, or in the process of operating the dam. So there's been no reduction in the flow of water. And Sudan, which has suffered from droughts and flooding, they make out very well. They do nothing but benefit by what the Ethiopians have done. The Rosira Dam is just not large enough. They built the Merowe Dam a while back in 2009. But this now controls the water going into Sudan and provides an even continuous flow. So there is no real problem with Sudan. I think they agree completely with what's being done. The Egyptians have to recognize that there is a positive quality to Ethiopia's development, rather than seeing this in geopolitical terms, that Ethiopia is going to upset the balance of the Nile Basin nations. They should recognize that this is actually a positive development. This helps their country. If we're improving the living conditions of people in Ethiopia, that's helpful to Sudan. That's helpful to Egypt. Instead of seeing this zero-sum game that the West has of either I'm on top or I'm on the bottom, only winners and losers and victors and victims, This is a silly notion that the British brought in geopolitics, and the West continues today in the rule-based order. So Ethiopia has to realize these previous colonial agreements are not applicable, and we should eliminate colonialism. Why should we have a legacy of colonialism now that African countries have all been liberated? So the Egyptians have to change it and improve the worldview. In terms of the West, which is of course still dominated by the United States and then secondarily Europe, they have a warped ideology of the world that people, they don't understand that the positive development of people around the rest of the world is in the self-interest of the United States. If we are eliminating poverty, then we're eliminating a condition of life that violent extremism preys on, that terrorism preys on. If people in Ethiopia and Africa are improving their standard of living, then they're going to be buying more advanced capital products from the West for industry, as Ethiopia and other African countries build up their industry. So we have to have a new conception, a new way of thinking. I would call it a new paradigm of development, where the world sees it's in the self-interest of all nations to develop each other and to assist in the developing of others. The self-interest of one nation lies in the self-interest of other nations, because we're all human beings. We all are alike by the powers of creativity, and therefore we all benefit from the improvement in the material standard of living in life, so we can further enrich and develop our powers of creativity. And I would propose to the rest of the world, change your ideology and adopt a new concept of development based on the paradigm of economic growth for Africa.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. That was a good summary, and we are just about to wrap up our show, and I thank you so very much, Lawrence, for taking your time all the way from the United States, and Professor Jacob, as you have always been, and Dr. Aragawi. Once again, I would like to congratulate all Ethiopians, particularly Professor Jacob, for having worked so hard and being able to see the completion, Dr. Aragawi for coordinating the public and then see the fruition, and Lawrence for having been so steadfastly fighting for fairness and seeing this on September 9. And then we will celebrate together. And for now, I would like all of us to clap hands for Ethiopia. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yes,
this has been an African Renaissance television service program, the Horn of African Digest, and today we had amazing guests, Dr. Aragawi Berhe from the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam Public Participation Office, Professor Jacob Arsano, the renowned and celebrated academic and Ethiopian advocate, and Lawrence Freeman, the God of Nile. I give you this title today. Thank you very much. Have a very good day.
Thank you.
Bye.